one. The first stage is trust versus mistrust. And it is approximately, obviously it starts at birth. For some ritualizations, it starts prior to birth. People who do prenatal baby care, where they have their in utero baby listen to music and so forth to try to enhance their intellectual abilities. These are ritualizations that emphasize the value of the intellect in our culture. So that would be something in our culture that we might see. So pre-birth to birth, up until about age 1. What's happening here in this primary relationship with a caregiver, most likely a mother, but sometimes a father, a grandparent, and so forth. But in this relationship, the basic needs of survival need to be met. Okay? Survival needs obviously include shelter from the environment, warm clothes, keeping them inside if it's a bad day, not exposing them to harmful environmental elements. So protection from the environment. Certainly food. Okay, so food and shelter that you've heard before. Another basic survival need, and we know this from independent research, not necessarily research tied with Erickson's theory, so it's more of a validation since it wasn't proposing this particular theory, is the notion that love or expressions of love need to be present in order for the child to thrive. They need to be held. Okay? There needs to be physical touch. How do we know this? Back in World War I, lots of babies were made orphans in Europe by World War I. And a psychologist was interested in studying what their experiences were in the orphanages. And so, and maybe some of you have seen these films in general psychology, there were cribs, rows and rows of cribs, where the nurses, very few of them, because they were busy taking care of the soldiers, would walk up and down and just take care of the basic needs. If they needed diapering, if they needed to be fed. They weren't being held, okay, maybe briefly for the diaper change, but a bottle was stuck in their mouth and then taken out maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour later. And so they were not loved. These babies died at a much higher rate than babies who were given the love needs were satisfied. Even though they were given adequate food, they were protected in the environment. So love as a separate, independent need needs to be fulfilled. When these basic needs are fulfilled, including love, then a person, the developing personality, establishes a basic sense of trust in others. Certainly through the primary caregiver, but then generalizes that to other people in his or her life. A basic sense of trust that people will, in general, provide what I need. Okay? Now, remember how I had said before that that's the positive resolution of the crisis. If it goes the other way, you have a neglectful parent or a neglectful caregiver, you have an abusive parent or caregiver, then what you're going to establish is a basic sense of mistrust. Now remember, these needs certainly have to be met, but the love needs do as well. And so while parents or caregivers might be giving the environmental protection and the food, if there is no expression of love in cuddling, playing, holding, that sort of thing, then the person will also develop that mistrust. So the resolution of the crisis toward the positive, a basic sense of trust. Remember, the other thing that I told you to look for is that there needs to be some elements of the negative in there. Okay, so yes, you do have to establish a sense of trust or you're never going to seek out relationships. But you should also have an element of mistrust in there. Now, how does that happen? Parents or caregivers are not going to be able to determine every single need that the baby has, because the baby cannot clearly convey those needs. A baby's crying, all right? Maybe he's hungry, so you feed him. He still cries. Maybe his diaper is filled, so you change it. It's fresh. He's still crying. Maybe there's something bothering him. He's uncomfortable physically. You change him, you soothe him, you do whatever you can. He's still crying. You have no idea what this baby wants. You are unable to satisfy that need, at least in that moment. And so even the best parent, which lots of psychologists talk about, that the best parent is the good enough parent. The parent who tries, the parent who 80% of the time is spot on with responding to those needs. because that's about the best you can do. And as long as you're trying, that's good enough. And that leaves that element for failure in there, okay, that you